What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and on YouTube, we see a lot of redraft strategy videos. We see Hero RB, Robust RB. I covered Zero RB last week, but I think there's one strategy in particular that doesn't get enough shine, even though it absolutely smashed in 2021 and won people literally millions of dollars. So we're going to talk about that on the other side of the intro. As always, if you enjoy the video, make sure you get down below, subscribe, leave a like. Let's go.
Thirsty, trying to choose. I know I'm critical. My nitty bag.
So the draft strategy we're going to be talking about today has a couple names. You can call it Double Hero RB, Double Anchor RB, Superhero RB. For the sake of this video, we're going to call it Double Hero RB. We also called it last year Bimodal RB, and I touched on it for maybe like 5 minutes of one of those videos last year when I was talking through draft strategies. So I kind of wanted to revisit it this year, especially after it was so successful, and kind of talk through the basis of the strategy. So when we're talking about the idea and just like the theory behind Double Hero RB, it's very similar to just normal Hero RB, where we want to take stabs at those running backs in those first 2 rounds because we know that's where the league winners are located at, and then we want to sidestep those dead zone running back profiles in those middle rounds. And we're going to be using this screenshot a lot this offseason, and I think it illustrates really well kind of that happening on the draft board. And these are advance rates on Underdog based on where teams drafted running backs. As you guys can see, any of those green advance rates means that taking a running back in that spot helped the team's advance rate, and if it's red, then it hurt their advance rate. And as you guys can see, in rounds 1 through 2, picking running backs was a net positive on your team, while picking running backs rounds 3 through 7 was not. And then obviously it turns back around into green once round 8 comes around. Now, I want to put a big fat disclaimer on this. Yes, this is best ball information we're using here, best ball data we're using here, but when we're making really big assumptions about optimal drafting and optimal structure for redraft managed leagues, I think best ball is a great tool to look at when it comes to structure, because we have so much data in best ball. This chart right here that we're looking at has data from 155,000 teams from last year's Best Ball Mania 2. We're not getting that kind of pull and lift from data in like ESPN leagues or redraft managed leagues. There's also a lot of variables where teams are making trades and people are being inactive on waivers. You might just have like a group of 10-year-olds making a league on ESPN. So it's tough to take those studies or data about redraft managed leagues super seriously, because there's a lot of variables at play, where with best ball, after the draft happens, every league operates the exact same. These also aren't weighted towards the playoffs. This is measuring advance rate, so it just takes teams scoring from weeks 1 through 14 and then how much those players help them make it to the playoffs. Now, in terms of Double Hero RB, it pushes Hero RB one step further, and you actually double tap running back up top instead of taking just one running back. And this maximizes your chance of hitting on a league winning running back, right? Like Eckler last year, Jonathan Taylor last year, but then it also gives you a chance to hit on 2 of them. And if you were a guy who hit on Eckler and Jonathan Taylor at that 1-2 turn, you very easily won your league. Same thing with the year before that. If you could have gotten like Kamara and timed that out with whatever running back was coming around the other side, you have a lot of outs to not only hitting on one of those running backs, but if you hit on 2, it's pretty much game over. Now, these league-winning running backs we're referencing are pretty much from the idea of a really solid article last year that Pat Kerrane had. I'll make sure that I link it somewhere down below. But he covered the upside of early round running backs and labeled it legendary upside. And he defined legendary seasons as players who provide a 20% or better win rate in best ball. So instead of having a 1 out of 12 chance to win your league, which is 8.3%, these players, if you had them on your team, they were so good that they made your odds of winning that league 1 out of 5 instead of 1 out of 12. And Jonathan Taylor and Eckler actually didn't qualify last year, but if you go back to 2020, you're looking at Kamara, CMC in 2018, Todd Gurley before that. All of these guys give you access to crazy ceilings where they make your odds to win the championship way higher than any other position could. As you guys can see by this chart, running backs have access to that legendary win rate type season at a much higher clip than wide receiver. You're just looking at 8% in round 1 and like 3% in round 5. And when you look at running back, you're looking at 10% in round 1, 8% in round 2, sort of like 4 or 5% in round 3. Across the board, running backs are beating wide receivers at having these kinds of seasons. And as we can see here, they are most prevalent in those first 2 rounds. This is why we're going with Double Hero RB. We're taking 2 massive swings and hoping that we hit on 1 or 2 of those legendary running back seasons in a given year. Now, I was talking up this strategy about how it absolutely smashed in 2021. So let's talk about the results that this strategy has yielded in the past year. First off, we have the Best Ball Mania 2 winner on Underdog. This guy won $1 million. Liam Murphy, at Chess Liam, I believe on Twitter. He went Jonathan Taylor and Aaron Jones up top, and then he didn't go back to running back until Damian Harris in round 8, I believe, and then he finished it off with Rashad Penny and Jeff Wilson late. He used this strategy to literally bink $1 million up top, and it didn't only crush for him, but the strategy crushed as a whole last year. If you put into RotoViz, they have like a roster construction explorer. If you put in running back 1 and 2 through those first 2 rounds, and then RB3 after round 7, you're looking at pretty crazy advance rates into the playoffs. Last year, 2 out of 12 teams advanced to BBM2 playoffs, which would be a 16.7% advance rate. Teams who use this strategy, doesn't matter how many running backs they ended up with, had a 26.8% advance rate, which is a 60% increase from what you're implying at that 16.7% advance rate. So just crazy how this almost carried you into the playoffs just based off of structure. Now, again, yes, this is best ball, but this is data from over 14,000 teams who use this strategy, and we can see on a broad scale that it yielded very positive results. Now, we're not going to implement this the exact same way they do in best ball, but we can sort of take the core principles of it and then apply it to our redraft managed leagues where we don't have to worry about in-season management, waiver wires, all of that stuff. Now, before we talk about the key differences from using this strategy in best ball to using this strategy in redraft managed leagues, if you guys want to get in on the fun of best ball this summer, go out there and try the Best Ball Mania 3 tournament to win $2 million up top like Liam did last year. We also have the Superflex. We also have the Puppy Butt Superflex tournament where it's $5 to enter. It's a little bit of an easier entry fee to swallow this far out. Instead of the $25 for BBM3, you can do $5 for the Puppy. And if you want to hop on there and you are a first-time user, you go down below, use my promo code Ron. It'll be either in the description, it'll be in the comments, but you click that link, sends you there, you use promo code Ron, and they will match your deposit all the way up to $100. So if you deposit 25, they'll put 25 more in your account. If you deposit 50, they'll put 50 more in your account. So again, if you want to get in on the fun of best ball this summer, go down below, use promo code Ron when you sign up for Underdog Fantasy, and they will match your deposit up to $100. So when we're talking about key differences of trying to carry this over into redraft managed leagues, we obviously want to keep the idea of double tapping running back up top and then being patient until that round 8+ area. But I think in best ball, when there's no waivers and you need to sort of already have running backs on your team to fill in for injuries and bye weeks, I think in a redraft managed league, you can actually push that out further. So Liam ended up with 5 running backs on his team in an 18-round league. Most normal leagues are about 14 rounds. I don't think you need to end up with 5 running backs. I think you can end up with like 3 to 4. And the reason I say this is because when we're talking about a normal 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receiver, tight end, 2 flex, like 6 bench league that most people are in PPR, again, there's 14 rounds, and we want wide receivers through our flex. This is a great chart showing that after those first 5 picks or so, wide receivers are projected to score more than running backs through about pick 100. So when we're doing double hero RB, we're betting that we hit on one or both of those hero RBs up top. And then I think in this setup, you probably want to stop at 3 to 4 running backs so you can draft 2 up top, draft wide receivers through pick 100, cover ground at quarterback and tight end here and there, and then probably just put a bow on top with like 1 to 2 bench spots to churn out handcuffs, where you pretty much just take 2 stabs at ambiguous running backs late. They don't show anything in week 1. You start churning on the waiver wire so that by the time playoffs come around or bye weeks come around, you have those backups on your bench. But I think that you should be able to trust yourself to grind waivers and find guys that will be usable by week 6, week 7, week 8, week 9. I don't think off the bat you need to sort of have those backup running backs in place yet. So I think a decent rule of thumb would be to take 2 running backs up top, no running backs until after round 7. I would even push that a little bit further. You guys are going to see from these teams, I don't take a running back until like the last 5 rounds after those first 2 up top. And I would be trying to get 5 to 6 wide receivers through 10 rounds where you're in leagues with 4 eligible wide receiver spots. So either 3 wide receivers and 1 flex or 2 wide receivers and 2 flexes. You want to cover ground at wide receiver after foregoing those top 2 picks, and you want to end up with 5 to 6 through 10 rounds. Now, the question is, what leagues can I implement this in? I get that question all the time. I'm in a 0.5 PPR league. Can I use this strategy? I'm in a standard league. Can I use this strategy? The best part about this strategy is I would say this is the most beginner-friendly strategy and the most universal strategy out there. You can use it in any league. You can use it in a standard league, 0.5 PPR league, 10-team league, 8-team league, 16-team league. I think across the board, this strategy works really well. If there's only one flex spot, I think this strategy actually works better. I think if there's more flex spots, I think the strategy is also fine. So that's kind of the added perk of this strategy, is that it is easily the most universal. You can use it in any league setting out there. Now, before I go over these teams that I did mock drafts with of how to implement this strategy, I think that there's going to be some people who question, was it just an off year last year that this strategy works? Do we have multiple years of data? And what I would say to that is, when we have multiple years of data, that running backs in those first 2 rounds are what we want to be targeting, and then foregoing that in the dead zone. So we have multiple years of that strategy working. I think this year we saw more people implement the strategy. It worked well. And even on top of that, we had running backs up top. Those first 6 running backs of Zeke, Derrick Henry, Saquon, CMC, Dalvin Cook, Kamara, they all were pretty bad last year, and this strategy still dominated. So I think even with running backs up top not being as strong this year, there wasn't even a legendary running back season this year, and it was still a dominant strategy. So I think there's actually room for this to be an even more dominant strategy in 2022. So I would sort of put all those concerns to rest of, is this just a 1-year blip of this working out? Is the sample size big enough? I would say the sample size is big enough. We've seen Hero RB type strategies work. We have seen that 14,000 teams use this strategy, and it worked well last year despite having no legendary running backs and having a pretty brutal top 6 pick. So with that being said, let's talk about the spots that I like to use this strategy in 2022 and kind of how those teams end up. So the first one we'll talk about is from the 102. And I think this year, the best spot to implement this strategy, or just to take a running back in the first round, is the 101 or the 102. Just lock in whoever you like between CMC or JT, and then you're good to go. And you can come around on the other side and snag Javonte, Saquon, Nick Chubb, Leonard Fournette, James Conner, and feel pretty good about it. Now, for this draft in particular, we got really lucky. I have Saquon as like a early to mid-second. He gets to us at the 211, so that's huge. Saquon and JT is a very fun running back duo that I was actually taking at the 1-2 turn last year. We'll be happy to take that at the 1 and then like the 2-3 turn on the other way around. And then at the 302, we go CeeDee Lamb, which is a huge value, a guy who goes to the 202-1 underdog. So when we see that, we know that's instant value. Feel great about locking in CeeDee Lamb as the wide receiver 1 on this team. He is someone that I have around like wide receiver 7, wide receiver 8. So it doesn't feel like we're ceding too much ground at wide receiver. And on top of that, we now have a pretty big advantage at running back. Then we get to the 411, and things kind of get weird from here. I would have loved to have gone McLaurin, but McLaurin goes at the 408. I wanted to go Hollywood Brown, but I knew from ADP on Fantasy Pros that he'd be there at that next pick for me. So I was staring down Mike Williams, who I think is fine. Looking back at it, I maybe wish I went Mike Williams here and then stream tight end or something later on, but I think this is a good variation where we go with the 2 elite onesies. But I also feel good about the idea that Kittle went at that mid-third area, Pitts went at that late third area. To get Waller at the back of the 4th, I don't think he's that far apart from those 2 tight ends. So that felt like a good value pick. Now, at that next turn, 6'11", we are staring down Kyler, who's just a clear value at the 6'11". He stacks with Hollywood Brown. Again, traditionally, I'd only really want to take one elite onesie, which is quarterback or tight end, and then kind of stream the other one. But this fell in a certain way where I had to adjust on the fly. Took 2 onesies, only have 2 wide receivers through the first 6 picks, which isn't very ideal for me or very in character for what I usually do. But it was a fun way to sort of get out of my comfort zone. But after only having 2 wide receivers through 6 rounds, that's when I just spammed wide receivers. I pounded Devonta Smith, Chase Claypool, Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, Tyler Boyd, Jamison Williams. And that seems like overkill to go literally 6 wide receivers in a row there. But with quarterback locked in, tight end locked in, RB1 and RB2 locked in, I really just need to get my wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, and flexes right on this team, and we are looking at a juggernaut. So I think going like 7 wide receivers in a row like that, or 6 wide receivers in a row like that after going wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, I think that gives us a really good shot at finding 4 stable wide receivers to start every week in addition to our double hero RBs. Now again, because it's not best ball, I really don't think in a double hero RB build, you need to take that Damian Harris like Liam did for best ball, because again, you don't really have to cover for bye weeks. You can pick them up off waivers. Again, I just want to reserve those last 2 bench spots where I have Ty Davis Price and I have Jerick McKinnon, just 2 flyers that I like that are upside bench guys, but I'm completely fine cutting them through week 1 for whatever hot waiver name is out there. I trust myself to be able to churn through those 2 bench spots, to be able to fill in for those running backs when the time comes. Now, obviously, if JT goes down week 1, I'm in a rough spot. But if JT goes down week 1, you're in a rough spot regardless of if you pick that backup. So I don't really plan to fail in terms of trying to get running back depth there. We already took 2 up top. That's all of the allocation that I really want to spend there. I will leave it at that and get really skinny on those RB3 and RB4 spots. So this is the final team, and this is about as balanced as I'll go, but it's structurally sound. We don't need to stream quarterback or tight end. We have 2 stud running backs in Taylor and Barkley, no running backs in the dead zone, 6 wide receivers through round 10. We have 8 wide receivers through round 12. We have wide receivers through our flex. We have Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, Tyler Boyd, Jamison Williams to pop off the bench if any of them do well. And then again, those 2 running backs at the end to just give us free roster spots to do whatever we would like with and to churn through those waiver targets until the time comes where buys or injuries get in the way of our double hero RBs. All right, now we're going to run this one back on Sleeper just to kind of get a different look from Fantasy Pros and now Sleeper. And we're going to go from the other spot that I think is the other area that I'd be wanting to implement this strategy from, which is the back end of the first. And we go Mixon and Swift here, but I think up top, you can really go with any 2 of like Chubb, Najee, Dalvin Cook, Kamara, Saquon, Fournette, Aaron Jones. Maybe not Fournette at the 202, but you guys get what I'm saying. These running backs that go at the 1-2 turn, if you get 2 of them, I love Mixon and Swift. Not super high on Mixon, but I decided we get him at the 111 because I know Swift would come back to me. So we go Mixon, Swift up top. And I think that is a fine way to kind of lock in an RB start. Now, we come at the turn here, 311 and 402, where there's usually going to be some good wide receivers on the board. T. Higgins is a guy that I have in a tier that's like in this early 3rd range, so he's a smash pick here. I also do like Deontay Johnson. I like a lot of these guys in this 3-4 range. We're talking about Deontay Johnson, Waddle. I even like Michael Pittman, who for some reason went all the way to 503. But there's some good wide receiver value here. We come back around in the 5th. We go Mike Williams. We go Amon-Ra St. Brown. So now we're just stacking up wide receivers. We have wide receivers all the way through the flex. We have 2 stud running backs. Now, the issue is Sleeper does not value wide receivers the correct way. I cannot stare at Rashad Bateman and Gabriel Davis, who routinely go on underdog around like, they usually are gone by the end of the 5th. Amon-Ra St. Brown and Gabriel Davis. So to have them in the 7th and 8th round, I have to take them there. Now, the issue is, I couldn't tell if that was overkill because now we're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wide receivers. We haven't addressed the onesie position yet. The issue was that Goddard was gone, and I didn't really want to take Russell Wilson or Dak Prescott with Trey Lance on the board and then also not being able to stack them with anybody. If I had CeeDee Lamb, then I think Dak would have made sense. If I had Judy or Sutton, I think Russ would have made sense, but I don't really see the issue of, especially in a redraft managed league, when I can just stream quarterbacks to just wait around, take 2 guys that I have way above where they're at on Sleeper. So we go Trey Lance in the 9th round. I would have loved to get one of Zach Ertz, Freiermuth, or Gesicki. Couldn't get any of them to fall back to me, so we go Lance. We pretty much just swallow our pride. We are going to be streaming tight ends this season. We come back around. Claypool's on the board. I could have gone with like a Ramondre, but again, in a redraft manage, I'm just not super interested in adding on running back depth if we're taking 2 running backs up top and using all of that draft capital there. Ramondre would have been fine, but I have Claypool ahead of him. I also have Claypool just in this tier ahead of a lot of these next wide receivers. So we do go Claypool there, and we cut off our wide receivers at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I don't think 7 in a 14-round draft is that bad. Then we come back around all the way down to the 11th round. We take Albert O. We come back. We take our 2 swings on running backs, and then we go to the end, and we take Tonyan. So we have Robert Tonyan and Albert O at tight end, which isn't pretty, but again, when you allocate 2 running backs up top, you're probably going to have to stream either quarterback or tight end. We're kind of streaming both positions, but I would argue that as long as Trey Lance starts, he will be just fine at quarterback. And then we take Rachaad White and Khalil Herbert, who are fine like upside swings. Rachaad White, rookie, who knows what could happen there in pass catching skill set. And then Khalil Herbert is a handcuff with upside. If David Montgomery isn't great, if this new coaching staff wants to implement a committee, he's a fun pick there. Again, this is a team where we're set up with 2 running backs up top. We have 7 wide receivers now. Should be plenty to fill out the flex file. We have T. Higgins, Deontay Johnson, Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Rashad Bateman, Gabriel Davis, Chase Claypool. That should have us set at wide receiver and our flex spot. Also, if you think that's overkill at wide receiver, which I'm open to, I also didn't love taking that many wide receivers in this build when we sort of needed to address our onesie positions. There's never too many wide receivers. I think later down the line, you could probably trade one of them if you end up having too many wide receivers and you're just having like 20-point weeks on your bench. yes, there will be a time where you could just trade one away for an elite tight end, or you can kind of package one with Trey Lance and go out there and get a Lamar Jackson. There's a lot of different ways to maneuver out of a problem like that. But again, this is a fun team. We are stacked with wide receiver depth. We have 2 running backs up top. Onesies are a little flimsy. I think Trey Lance is just fine. We're going to be streaming tight ends, but in a lot of builds, you're going to be streaming tight ends. So again, I think this is a great build. It's a fun build. I think it would be a strong team off the bat. So again, I like how that team turned out as a double hero RB type setup. All right, so I was editing this video and I wanted to come on here and give you guys one more mock draft because I wanted to really represent that draft that Liam Murphy did in Bestlemania 2, where he took that detour at running back around round 8 where he went with Damian Harris. And I think that this still makes sense in this build. I didn't want it to come across like you can only take the 2 running backs up top and then you can't take one in that zone. Really, the only spot that you can't take running back is in the dead zone, right? So rounds like 3 through 7. And then after that, you're absolutely fine. I wouldn't hammer running back because you took 2 up top, but I think a running back in like the round 8 to round 12 area makes a ton of sense, and then just get one in like the last round, just a dart throw. So even if there's something that falls to me, like I'm trying to look through guys here where like Kenneth Walker in the 9th round, I think is a value. So if I was here, I think that would have made sense. Same thing with Rashad Penny in the 9th. I like Chase Edmonds too. I don't know where he went in this mock. No, Chase Edmonds in the 6th round cannot do that. But Chase Edmonds in the 9th round, I would make that detour for him. There are certain guys where I would make detours for. It's just the way that those first 2 mocks shook out, where I didn't like any of the running back value that fell to me. It's not so much that you can't draft running back until like the last 5 rounds. You just draft 2 up top, you skip out on the dead zone, and then you're free to draft a couple more running backs. I wouldn't hammer running backs. I would probably, in a league like this where it's 14 rounds, I would probably cut it off at 3 to 5 running backs here. Now, this draft in general, we go from the 2 spot again. We go McCaffrey up top. We go James Conner. I'll be honest with you guys, this James Conner pick is pretty out of character for me. I actually think that James Conner is a value this year, but I like Debo more than him. I like CeeDee Lamb more than him. I like T. Higgins more than him. But it's whatever. I did it for the build. We come back around. We go CD, which is pretty similar to what we did last time. We come back around here in the 4th round. We go DJ Moore, who actually fell to us. I want to say he wasn't available in that first mock draft. We come back around. We go Marquise Brown. So these are 3 really nice wide receivers. This is a top, like 7 wide receiver. These are 2 very firm wide receiver 2s. We come all the way back around. This is our first detour away from wide receivers since the first 2 rounds, where, again, Kyler Murray at the 6'11 is unfair. I don't know how Jalen Hurts goes ahead of him. These mocks are kind of cooked. I think once ADP gets a little bit more straightened out by, like, August, these will be fixed, but it's not like I can do these mocks with you guys because you're going to know that I'm trying to deploy some type of strategy, and then that'll kind of get all messed up. Sleeper as well was pretty cooked when we went on there, and Rashad Bateman and Gabriel Davis were just given to us. But we're working with what we got. Now, we come back around here. And I firmly remember when I was on the clock here and I got Devonta Smith. This is an ugly spot, if I'm being honest. Now, this is just overall strategy from this 7th round. I have Devonta Smith, Drake London, maybe Tyler Lockett's in there too, Ayuk, Burks, Garrett Wilson. I have all those guys in the same tier. So I just had this big fat tier of like 8 to 10 wide receivers, and I just had to take the one that I had ranked the highest. So I took Devonta Smith. Didn't feel great. We come back around. We go Garrett Wilson. So that is what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wide receivers through 8 rounds. Now, if you remember, 0 RB is we want 6 wide receivers through 9 rounds. So even though we took 2 running backs up top, we're still like almost following some 0 RB-esque type principles. Now, this is where we take our detour. And I think this 9th round, this 8th round here, I really want to say this early 9th is actually really nice for taking a detour. We went Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt I love. I'm actually going to be making a 0 RB targets video where I'm going to talk about him in depth. But he's one of those guys I really like, especially with this Alvin Kamara suspension sort of looming. There is a world out there where Kareem Hunt gets traded to the Saints, and that would just be magical for him. I think that he would probably shoot up to like the 5th, 6th round range. You can get him in the 9th round right now. I think Devin Singletary is nice in this range. I think Miles Sanders is nice in this range. I like Pollard. Chase Edmonds doesn't usually go in the 6th round. Usually he's around here. I like Edmonds in this range. Pollard is fine. Kenneth Walker is amazing in this range. Ramondre Stevenson. So there is a range of running backs here that I like. And if there are no wide receivers on the board that are super interesting, especially here, I mean, like Claypool and Tony, I like those guys, but I wanted to kind of show you guys what it looks like if I went with Kareem Hunt. So we go Kareem Hunt again. I like all these guys in this range. You can just grab one of them. And then especially if you do grab one in like this 9th round range, I would just worry about hammering wide receivers, whatever ones that you didn't get early, and then just take one more flyer on running back at the end here. Actually, I just realized that you guys actually can't see this on the screen. These last couple picks. Can I scroll down? There we go. But yeah, we go Kareem Hunt. We come back around, and this is when we sort of have to address tight end. It is nice though. We go Ertz, so he actually stacks with Kyler Murray. We have Marquise Brown in that stack. That's really fun. We come back around here. Sky Moore is a crazy value in these as well, but I also think that rookies are just going to be values. It was the same thing with Elijah Moore last year, where Sky Moore is an 11th rounder here. On Underdog, he's like a 7th, 8th rounder. Now, he's definitely getting pushed up because, one, it's best ball. Two, people are stacking Chiefs, and they're stacking the Chiefs-Broncos game in Week 17. But still, it's too big of a discrepancy to not jump all over that in the 11th round. We come back around here, and we just want to get one more just pretty safe option at wide receiver that gives us just some sort of stability in bye weeks or anything along those lines. So we get our 7th wide receiver here. We go Tyler Boyd. We go Hunter Henry here as just a second tight end. You can really go with Hunter Henry. You could go with Fant. You could go Albert O and Njoku. I was really hoping that Gesicki would make it back to me here, but obviously he didn't. Then we took our final running back, Dearness Johnson. Now you might be like, Ron, these guys are both on the same team. Why would you take a Cleveland running back and 2 Cleveland running backs? But I'm going to talk about this in my 0 running back video. But Kareem Hunt and Dearness Johnson are great guys to stack right now because they have this correlated outcome where you can really hit the nuts. Because if Kareem Hunt, let's say Kareem Hunt gets traded to the Saints, his value skyrockets, and then so Dearness Johnson gets a big boost as well because he is now the firm number 2 running back in that backfield. We know that Chubb has dealt with injuries, and then we also know that maybe not a timeshare, but Dearness Johnson can catch passes, he can do his thing. He was really good last year, so I think that it would give him a little bit of a boost as well. And then same thing on the other side of that. If Dearness Johnson's drawing live to get traded to the Saints or get traded wherever. And if that happens, Kareem Hunt gets a slight boost because he doesn't have to be in a 3-way committee anymore. And Dearness Johnson gets a massive boost. If he finds himself in Atlanta, if he finds himself in New Orleans, Dearness Johnson probably goes up into this area, and that's interesting. So I think there's value to be had there. Again, this is a strategy video, so there wasn't really a need to go that deep into Kareem Hunt and Dearness Johnson. But again, just wanted to show you guys what it would look like if you drafted a team where you took that running back detour in that round 8 to 12 range. And again, I think that is absolutely fine to do. I just don't think that the first 2 drafts really set up for me to do that. I think either way is fine. Now, we will cut back to the outro, and that'll be that. So with that being said, I think I covered this draft strategy as thoroughly as possible. I gave you guys some real life examples. I will say, if you want to sort of add your Damian Harris to this build like Liam Murphy did in the Underdog WrestleMania 2 championship, you can go out there and do that. You can get your Damian Harris, I'm trying to think through those guys, but like Chase Edmonds, you can go Rashad Penny. If you want to add one of those guys in there, you can, but you're probably 1000% going to have to stream at least one onesie position if you do, or you might not have enough depth at wide receiver to fill positions through your flex spot. So there's just something to think about. Now, if you enjoyed the video at any point in time, make sure you go down below, subscribe, leave a like. If you have any comments on this video as well that maybe you don't understand the strategy, you have questions on the strategy, you want to pick my brain on something, if you want to know if it works in your league, it most likely does. But if you want to know that, you can comment that as well down below. But as always, I will see you guys in the next one.
I got the juice, I got the juice. Channel, Chatham's on. Foolies glad I'm home. Even my haters kinda glad I'm on. Rest in peace to my vagabond. Rapper song, singer, suspended, subpoena from Mr. Me.